This is Mark Anthony Williams with So You Want to Be a Safety Professional. We've got an exciting guest today. We've got Mr. Merle Heckman, who is a master trainer at the Dale Carnegie Institute. He is going to talk to us today about the Knowledge-Safety Nexus, how learning fuels better EHS practices. Merle, how are you doing today?
Mark Anthony, honored to be with you today and great to be able to speak to your followers.
Man, honor is mine. I promise. I promise you. We've got some great questions lined up. My first question, Merle, in your opinion, what role do certifications and advanced degrees play in EHS professionals' careers? There's a lot of talk about certifications nowadays. If you don't have it, you need to get it in order to get a job or for people to take you seriously. What do you think?
My background has started in HR, and I have the high HR certification. So when I think about safety professionals getting that, just because you have some letters after your name doesn't guarantee that you and I know how to lead people.
That's fair.
What it does, though, is it gives us the discipline to go after a certain course of learning and a certain set of skills. And I believe that's important. I mean, Mark Anthony, most of us could learn the things we wanted to learn by reading some books, by talking to some people, but there is something about a structure that helps us have the discipline to learn. So it's a little bit like a college degree. Doesn't guarantee you and I can do a particular job, but it does say this person has gone through the rigors and is willing to learn. That's really what it says.
That's a fair point. Like they've invested the time to learn about the craft.
Yes.
Right? Let's see it like that. There's no different than engineering or plumbing or anything like that. This person has gone through the rigors to learn about the field, learn about the craft. But to your point, it doesn't necessarily mean they have the experience or the skills to put it all together, right?
And I think that's important for the person themselves that earns the certification to remember that. Now, you know, when folks get the CSP and they walk out on the shop floor,
look, I got my CSP now, y'all. I got my CSP.
Okay, now we're getting personal. But nobody on the shop floor cares. They really don't. But they want to know if you know your stuff. And that's where they also want to know if you know how to lead them and are interested in them as a human being.
That's a fair point. I've seen that quite a bit with a lot of maintenance folks and lockout tagout situations, hot work, confined space situations. Just having a CSP doesn't necessarily mean that you know the entire CFR for 1910 or 1926, right? There's so many intricate pieces and letters of interpretation. That takes years to really pick up on that stuff and years of active application. What are the essential skills and knowledge areas that an EHS professional should focus on for continued growth?
Well, certainly they need to be aware of the regulations. And certainly as a safety professional, you have to keep in touch with changes and be alert to that.
That's true.
I would suggest, though, that many times safety professionals are forgetting to learn their people skills. And that's really where my background with Dale Carnegie comes in, because what we see is that people know the stuff, they know the regulations, they know the guidelines, yet they sometimes seem to struggle because they don't know how to influence. And as we all know, you can tell people to do something, you can be right, but it doesn't guarantee that they'll come around to your way of thinking.
That's a fair point.
I can remember as a child, my mother would had a quote, and she had read it in Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The quote was, "A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." And you can have the right information, and you can say this is the rule and the regulation. But if you force people, they'll do it while you're there. But as we all know, once you walk away,
that's true.
That's why Dwight Eisenhower, the famous president and military leader, had a
Mhm.
great quote about leadership, which is very applicable to safety professionals.
Do tell.
Leadership is the art of getting someone else to do what you want done because they want to do it. And when we can move from this is a have to a want to,
Hmm.
we have taken a real step. Now, I understand there are some times you have to tell people, this is what you do or else.
The buck stops here. That's
That's
fair.
right. That's right. But that ought to be the last resort.
That's fair.
And so the question is, are we willing to keep learning of how to improve our skills with people? Because as you know, it comes down to the human heart and the human mind making the choice
That's true.
what you want to do.
There's no S in my chest. Um, I can force you to do it, but me forcing you to do it means that there's an external influence. I want there to be an internal influence where even when there's no cameras, there's no one around, you're going to do the right thing because you see the point of it. You believe in it. You see the value in it. You realize the importance of it and the consequences of if you don't do it, what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
There is a great book called Why People Do What They Do. And I don't have the author in front of me right now, but that book will describe to people,
Hmm.
understand it really is. This is where safety professionals can really step their game up. It really is where they figure out human nature and what is the inward thinking of individuals. And that, Mark Anthony, is critical because if we forget that,
Hmm.
we forget the edge that we have.
I
We
don't think
forget
anything else will work without it.
it.
Really.
It won't. It won't. It's just really critical to do to know that. So I believe that in all the things, it's a big deal being a safety professional. There's a lot of pulls on you in a lot of different ways. But that idea of I've got to be able to understand people. I've got to be able to understand people is really a key. And by the way, that book is Why We Do What We Do, and it's written by Edward Dicey, Deci,
I'm going to have to go.
Understanding Self-Motivation.
You just added
Worth,
something to my reading list for the year. I'm trying to hit
worth a while.
24.
Worth a while.
Okay. Okay. It's funny that you say that. I often think that a lot of safety professionals try to be safety cops, but I think that we should, focus on being a safety coach. And the difference in the two, a safety cop leads with enforcement. You must do this because I'm the authority and I'm telling you what the law is or what the compliance requirement is. And the safety coach is encouraging you to do the right thing because he cares about you and he has a vested interest in your well-being, right? And you, upon seeing this, you realize, you know what? This guy might be annoying. This guy might be persistent, but he's doing the right thing because he cares about me. And at the end of the day, he's right. I probably shouldn't be doing whatever I'm doing. There probably is a safer way to do it. Now, when I sort of couple that with removing the barriers, the obstacles in the system that make things harder to do, I realize that it's never really a people issue. It's usually a systemic issue, and the system itself has to set people up for success, even with the trainings they receive, right? Um, that being said, what steps should organizations take to ensure that learning is translated into actionable safety improvements?
I believe, first of all, people need to understand the reason why. I think
Okay.
it's really easy for us to have what they call the curse of knowledge. We know what the liabilities can be. We know why it's important.
Mm-hmm.
And yet sometimes we do not teach the people the why, the reason behind it. And it just looks like, well, you're just wanting me to do this because you have power.
Right.
And when we can take the time to explain to folks, this is the reason, this could be the well-being for you, or this is the purpose, all of a sudden it makes a big difference.
That's
So
fair.
I believe that's one important part. I believe also we have to make learning very relevant to people. it's not like, well, why? Again, it goes back to the why. Well, what's the reason for this? What's the
With
purpose
them.
of this? Why do you need this? And third, at times we can be so knowledgeable, and when we present that, the people don't quite understand. I wonder how many times folks walk out of our training and they kind of look at each other and say, "Do you know what he was talking about?" Well, no, I don't feel too smart. But we want to. I heard someone say one time that it was like we want to take the jelly that's on the top shelf and set it down to the lower shelf where everybody can reach it and get to it. And that's where there are some tools we could do to do better in our teaching and our training that would help us.
That makes a lot of sense. I've had to launch near miss programs and systems where, as a part of the near miss program or system, I would also launch, toolbox talks or
Mm-hmm.
safety tips of the day that the leaders, the leads, the supervisors, etc., would, share with their crews, share with their teams. And the reason I did it like that was because I realized the more I educated the employees on the hazards around them and the proper way to do things, the more they knew what right actually looked like, and they were exposed to that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge in digestible forms, not just
Yes.
all at once, just every day was a different topic that got them thinking. That would improve their awareness and observations and the things that they reported versus me just saying, well, just report anything. And if I don't educate them, if I don't make it uh, in a way that they can understand what I'm saying, what they should be looking for, where it's relevant to their everyday job. They're kind of like, okay, I guess I'll just report that pallet sitting in the corner, right?
The idea is, and that you're spot on, that we tend to say, well, I gave them all this information, I'm sure they got it.
Mm-hmm.
That's like somebody backing a dump truck to your front yard, raising up and just dumping the whole pile of dirt and saying, it's delivered. I know. So and I want to be clear, it's not that people are dumb, it's not that they're stupid, it's not that they're slow.
Of course not.
It's just that people need some bite-sized bites.
Everybody
Some of
learns
it,
at a different pace, and it's
but
not fair to judge a fish as like a monkey by its ability to climb a tree, right? Like everybody is designed differently, and you have to account for, I don't want to say the lowest level of intelligence, more so you have to account for the simplest form of absorbing that information, right? So if you're not doing that, then you're probably doing a disservice to your team, to your population, your workforce.
and that's where we probably give always as safety professionals some consideration to the way that we present trainings. I believe this is where a trap that many of safety professionals fall into.
Also,
So, for example,
mm-hmm.
what do you suppose is the most common adjective that is used to describe safety training?
It's not a positive one.
Don't take the fifth on me anymore, man.
I've never seen somebody say, "Oh yeah, I'm excited to go to the safety training." I'm waiting for that day. The day that happens, I'll probably buy them lunch. Not one time.
It's sad.
It is.
One of the most important things that we're trying to help people with, and we make it boring and irrelevant and drab and painful.
Literally save your life for attending.
And we're trying to help save their lives. So that's why I believe that, we're talking about what safety professionals need to grow in. It's this area of how do I communicate? And how do I communicate in an effective way where they get it? And that's really some of the things I learned in the Dale Carnegie organization. We have a program that we present called High Impact Presentations. And it's a program where we teach people for 2 days how to present, but we also record them on 7 times in the short talks, and we review with them and we work with them on it. We see a recording of them, and we say, okay, what do you see that was good? What's one thing to work on the next time? Then we coach them. But it's that kind of investment in ourselves. Books like Made to Stick, written by Chip and Dan Heath, that talk about how do you get your ideas to stay with people.
Mm,
And also, one of the most powerful tools available to a safety person is stories and
yeah,
analogies,
correct.
because people will remember your stories long after they forget your slides.
That's fair. That's a good point. I'd often say something along the lines of, I want you to at least remember the funny guy that stood in front of you, and the point he was trying to make, even if you don't remember me verbatim. And the rules I was trying to tell you about, you remember why this funny little
Mm,
guy in front of you, why you said
yes.
it was important. It might help you in the future.
Huh.
My next question here is, I guess, how can companies encourage a culture of continuous learning within their EHS departments? Like, how do we get EHS professionals to develop those communication skills? What can companies do?
One thing that I've seen is that the leadership of the organization
Mm-hmm.
needs to show an interest in learning.
Okay.
When I was with Emerson Electric and we were teaching a course called Safety Leadership Skills, and we
Mm-hmm.
were teaching it, training trainers and teaching around the globe, one of the responses we got was, "This is great. Our managers and our folks supervisors find this very practical." But they said, "You're talking to the wrong crowd, Merle. You've got to talk to the directors and the vice presidents and even the presidents." And so we had to shift gears and go to start doing what we called safety leadership executive training programs. And we had to teach to executives
Mm-hmm.
why it's important, because that's that whole idea of continuous learning. If the people don't see the upper leadership support that, then it's a struggle.
That's a fair point.
It's a struggle. Yeah.
Lead by example.
So I think that we have to make learning fun, and yes, enjoyable, and yes, where people move from being, if the people who come to the class are just spectators, it's going to be painful. If we can help them to be participants,
Participants. Yep,
whole different
that's true.
activity there.
It has to
And
be interactive.
it has to be. And the illustration I heard years ago was, imagine a professional American football game, right? You have 22 people on the field, 11 offense, 11 defense. And those
Mm-hmm.
22 players desperately need rest. And then a football stadium, let's say it has 50,000 people who desperately need exercise. And so it's like that in the training room. So many times as safety trainers, we're
Mm-hmm.
up and we're talking, we're working, we desperately need rest. And the people in the seats desperately need involvement.
That's
So we
fair.
want to help them to be involved.
That's true. And that would take away some of that boredom.
Exactly. Exactly. Because then there's a statement we say in Carnegie: people support a world they help to create.
That is true. That's that buy-in. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can agree
it's
with
huge.
that. Jeez. Well, Merle, do you have any words of advice for aspiring safety professionals who need to work on or are currently working on their training expertise, their training skills?
The best advice I have is to be real and to be practical, but use stories, because stories captivate, stories teach, and
Mhm.
people learn, and they'll forget all your facts, but when you and I start talking stories, they'll learn through that. And final thought I have is, don't be afraid to be different. We've seen so many people in the past that just blah 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 blah. Don't be
Mhm.
afraid to push the limits and to be unique and different. Not for us to be hotshots, but just for us to be effective communicators and be memorable.
That makes sense. I mean, even asking the crowd questions,
Mm,
realizing or acknowledging that you don't know everything. You know, a lot of times I've gone up and said, look, I am not an expert in this. I know just enough to be teaching this class, but I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people in these seats that know 10 times more than I do from working in the field. And I'm going to need your help today as we do this presentation.
That's a great way to look at it. That's a great way. So
great. Well, folks, there you have it. We had a great episode. Merle, thank you so much for coming on. We spoke a lot about safety. We spoke a lot about knowledge. We spoke a lot about training and how to become a better trainer. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe. And like we said on the last episode, we do have our t-shirt giveaway. The next 100 subscribers will be entered into a raffle to win one of these t-shirts. They'll be selected and this will be mailed to them. And they'll give us a selfie of themselves wearing the t-shirt. All right. So until next time, thank you for tuning in. Stay well and stay safe.